Can everyone hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay. Denise, can you hear us?
Me too.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. So today we have the topic of these job interviews, as Denise had a very good idea to have this topic. So have you managed to go through the reading material, the videos, the questions? Yes, no, honest answers, guys?
Read and look most part of material, but I'm not finished with last video because 40 minutes of lesson is rather big. Thank you, good materials.
Okay.
As for me, I only read through that, and I hadn't enough time to watch the video, unfortunately.
Okay, all right. Well, that happens. It's just here for, guidance or just as supplementary material, but you definitely aren't obliged to watch it. It's just, it's a little bit of preparation if you can. Oh, did Noka just join us?
Yeah, hello. I'm sorry I'm late. May I come in?
Yes, join us. We're just getting started, so everything is fine. Everything is fine. Did you manage to look at any of the reading material or watch videos? Honest answers, it's okay if you didn't.
I'm very bad student. Please forgive me, Danielle.
Oh, it's fine. You guys, it's fine. It's fine. Again, it's just supplementary material. We're here for Conversation Club, so it's about talking. That's the most important thing. And improvisation is crucial, especially, maybe on a job interview. So that's a very good point to bring up. Job interviews. Maybe we should start with asking this question. I mean, has anyone been on a job interview lately? And what were your feelings about the whole process, about preparing, about the results? Maybe let's start with Denise. Have you been on a job interview recently?
Yes, periodically I take part in an interview. Good way to try my requirements at job market, and sometimes it's a good way to increase salary if I obtain. So yes, but every time I feel it like a university exam.
Okay, so you have a feeling that you're back in university, it's like an exam? Would you say that's what you're feeling?
Sorry? I'm not understand last.
Okay, I think I didn't maybe quite understand you. When you go on these interviews, were you saying that you feel like you're back at university with an exam, or I didn't quite catch what you were saying about how you felt about these interviews?
Yes, it's some. I try to explain. At one part, I feel myself as a rather quite professional, good set of skills, and I can to prove my skills. But I think novels, and I have many associations, and feel as back at university. I was a not good student, so usually at exam I was good studied for it.
Okay. So you're saying that the preparation, the whole idea of preparing for an interview, it reminds you of being back in university. Okay, that's a very good point to bring up. What about you, Lyoka? Have you been on an interview recently? What about your preparation and experience from it?
Yeah, I've been. I've been some 2 months ago, and I'm going on a new interview on Monday. So, and well, actually, I don't prepare, and I didn't prepare for this one that took part in August. I just came there, and we had 1 hour and a half conversation. So about almost everything. So it wasn't. I didn't. I didn't feel like it was a test or some exam. It was just free talking, and I was talking about myself, about my experience, and about my interests. Because you know what I can do is often not interesting for me. I am a person that is interested in new things that I don't know how to do, and that's why it is interesting for me. So I went to a company which works in a new area for me, a new working field. I don't know how to say it, and well, they took me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's really good. I mean, that whole idea of maybe not being prepared, of taking it as a natural, just new experience. I think that's a really interesting way to put it. I think that's a very effective way to approach an
Yeah,
interview.
and one more thing for me, it is not only I don't how I say воспринимать. How should I say it?
Like to accept, or in what context are you
I
talking
mean,
about here?
I don't look at it as a process where I am tested. Yeah, because
Okay,
I
yeah, you don't
test
consider
them.
it. You don't
Yeah,
okay.
I don't consider it as a test of myself. I consider it as a two ways test, you know, because I also test them, and I want to talk to them to see who are they, and to know the conditions and terms, and to think if I would like to go there or not, you know. So
Okay, this is a very good point you bring up. This whole sort of approach of making it be a two-way communication thing. You sound a lot like a journalist, you know, that look. So maybe
well, it's my first education, as you know.
yes. Well, this is a very good point because was also a journalist, and so I have interviewed many people. So I'm going to get into that sort of thing about how you feel confident when you go for a job interview. And just from my experience, I mean, I remember maybe not the first job interview I went on, but a job interview I'd gone on after I'd been working as a journalist for several years. I know that, okay, learning about it in school and university, how to prepare for a job interview or something like that, there's the whole sort of, oh, how not to be nervous, how to be prepared, and so on and so forth. But after working as a journalist, I think this is a great sort of life experience in philosophy in general. You know, you see that when you're interviewing people on a regular basis, as a journalist, say, does, you see that lots of people maybe are nervous. You know, these are maybe people who are heads of big companies or, you know, quite wealthy people, and they're pretty secure in life, but yet they can be, and not everyone, of course, but there are people who are in those good positions. They're definitely, I don't want to say above you, but still, you know, are pretty well situated in life, and yet these people can also be nervous when it comes to an interview. Why is that? Why is this sort of human nature to be nervous maybe about these new experiences, these new interactions with people? And I think that maybe the reason, in just my experience that I've seen, is people get nervous when it's something completely new and they're afraid of that new. But as Loka mentioned, if you take something as a learning experience, as a two-way communication, you're really able to open doors, not only for yourself, but for the person that you're talking with, because any sort of interview is going to be, it should be communication. I think that's the most important sort of feature of this, is that you want to exchange information, give questions, answer questions, give questions back, you know, welcome those new answers. So again, I think that's a very interesting point that we can talk about in a little more detail later. What about you, Elia? Have you been on an interview recently, or what kind of experience do you have with preparation, with communication, maybe nervousness?
Yes, as I'm a very emotional person, so usually I'm nervous, and but not recently. Last time I was at interview, or I had an interview, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. 3 years ago, and I was too brave, I think, maybe even how is it called in English? Вызывающе.
Maybe you were like too confident. Could you say confident?
Yes, too confident, maybe even. Yes, and as you were quite right, mentioning that really both sides are nervous during the interview, because and the higher the position is, more nervous the people, I think, because it is really something like interview, but like between two merchants, something like that, and the goal is to came to some ideal results, ideal
Conclusions and sort of outcome, maybe.
Yes, outcome and
Mhm.
general all the points be should be suitable for both sides, and it is really difficult.
Okay, I think, yeah, I mean, what you're talking there too is this whole interview is a negotiation process, you know, maybe that that confidence you're talking about, and this whole process of what you're doing, what sort of positions you're in, and then what sort of outcome you're going to come with. So yeah, again, very good point. But let's talk a little bit about confidence and nervousness. Now, Denise, you had mentioned that you kind of have this nervousness, you feel like you're back in university. What is it exactly that makes you nervous when you have an interview?
First, it's because every interview is some kind of estimation of my skill, and it's hard to if estimation my skill by an interview is less than my estimation. For programmers, every interview is some kind of skill competition. So it's I feel nervous because I'm afraid that my skill will be underestimated. Another point that yes, for me it's some kind of parallel for exam, and before I have experience in such situation. So yes.
Okay, it's interesting. So maybe this whole, as you're mentioning, this whole sort of preparedness or what have you. But why do you think that maybe your skills wouldn't come across as strong as they are? I mean, is there something in particular that leads to that self-confidence that you have? Is it the format of the interview itself? What would you say it is?
It's hard to every company has his own criteria to estimate and his own requirements. So sometimes they estimate not really skill but some kind of abstract knowledge, and it's hard to predict what he weight and exactly that they weight.
Okay, that's interesting. This whole sort of abstract knowledge that you're thinking about, that definitely sounds a lot like being back at university and having an
Yeah,
exam of
yeah.
some sort. You're
And,
right, definitely.
On the other side, it's hard sometimes to show real skills, because a real skills is a possibility to solve tasks and so to describe previous stories and some achievements. But sometimes it's hard to explain to staff which make an interview. And another thing that not all interview will provided by engineers. Sometimes it's only HR manager which has no skills but have some kind of some list of questions of answers. Can't provide exactly the same answer. Your knowledge will not be estimated good.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good point there. Elliot, what about you? What makes you nervous? You said that you're in general a very emotional person, and that's an obstacle for you with these interviews. But what is it specifically that makes you nervous about an interview?
Yes, for me, it's the most nervous point about income and circumstances of position. And I also feel that it is maybe not very polite, maybe not very maybe it's a person of good behavior shouldn't ask such things. So
Okay, so you're maybe concerned about politeness. Would you say that that's kind of your issue?
Yes, and I know that I'm afraid of that. That's why I myself and become vice versa, or in I took the opposite side. I become too confident, and it is not. It is like a teenager's brave. It looks really funny. So that's the problem of my nerves.
Okay, that's interesting. So this sort of overconfidence. I mean, I understand what you mean. I guess maybe it's the part that you're trying to really just get into the situation, be optimistic, be in the program, but then at the same time, maybe you're just taking it a level too far. Okay, I understand what you mean there. What about you, Loco? What makes you nervous? Does anything make you nervous on a job interview?
It depends, but well, I try not to nervous, of course, and I try to change my my point of view on that thing. But the only thing that can make me nervous is that when I really want to be taken in this company, because I like this company and I want to work with them a lot, and so I'm afraid of a failure. So that's the reason why I can be nervous at the interview. But if I consider it as, well, I will go now and I will take a look at them and I will think if I want to go there. For example, on Monday I'm going to an interview and I'm considering it this way. I want to hear what they want to offer me, and frankly, I don't think that I accept. I don't think they will offer me the conditions that I will be interesting. But I will go and just look.
Okay,
Anyway.
so that's your approach, just to kind of go in, no expectations. So maybe you're not so nervous because of that sort of approach, that you're not really expecting anything. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and if you want to get there in this company, or you want to be taken too much. That can make you nervous, of course. The fear of failure can make you nervous.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, I think when it comes to that fear of failure, you just I mean, that's a very good point. If you don't have any expectations, you really aren't going to have that fear of failure, I would suppose. When I do interviews, I mean, I don't really remember ever being particularly nervous. Just kind of going in and getting information, as Loka said. I think that's kind of the approach that I've always had. I remember one time I had an interview via Skype, and I don't want to say I was nervous, but it was kind of strange because I was always, I could see my picture, you know, and so I was thinking, oh my goodness, my hair is going this way, my hair is going that way. You know, and these are things that like I wouldn't have even known if I had been sitting in some sort of conference room or office setting or something like that. What about when it comes to boosting confidence? I mean, as Yoka mentioned, as I mentioned, this whole sort of approach of no expectations. When you go into an interview, what do you think? Do you think you could just kind of take it as a two-way information exchange? Do you think you could do that, Elia?
A two ways information exchange. Yes, of course, there is exchange, and I think that it is sometimes it is very difficult to stay that provocation questions, maybe to find a very suitable answer, because very often it is afterwards when you think about that interview, you think, oh, I could answer this, or I could say this, and but usually it is too late.
Okay, all right. What about you, Denise? Do you think you could go into an interview without the nervousness, just trying, without expectation, just trying to get information? Do you think you could do that? Denise, are you with us? Connection problems? Yoka, Elia, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, so we just must have lost Denise, I guess. Should we, I don't know how we can maybe try to get him. Denise, can you hear us? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe not. Connection issues.
But I think there should be connection because we see him. No?
Yeah, but we don't have. Okay, maybe he's taking a break, possibly. Maybe not. All right. Then, girls, what do you think? What do you think is the hardest thing about a job interview? What about the easiest thing? Maybe Elia, what do you think? The hardest and the easiest thing about a job interview? Oh, wait, Denise is back. Hang on a second.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I had a problem with network.
Okay, all right, it's fine. All right, you're back. So then,
yes.
Yeah. Then Denise, what do you think? What do you think when it comes to these job interviews? Do you think that you'd be able to go ahead and go into an interview without expectation, just take it as this sort of exchange of information without expectation? Do you think you could maybe try that?
I'm not sure that I can understand the question.
Just as a sort of hypothetical question, I mean, do you think you'd be able to go into a job interview and just forget about nervousness, forget about expectation, forget about specific things like that, but just to take it as what's happening right now, this sort of exchange of information, talking with someone. Do you think you could do that? Or is it more of a psychological barrier that you just can't grasp? What do you think?
I think it's yes, more about psychological barrier, and it's possible to prepare to interview. It's not about knowledge. It's not about some feeling and expectations, probably. I remember that in period I have many interview one by one. I was less nervous and feel more confident myself.
Okay, all right. So that's the whole thing. Yeah, feeling less nervous, more confidence. That's definitely a good goal in general to have. Let's maybe ask the question about the hardest thing on a job interview and the easiest thing. Denise, what do you think? For you, what's the hardest thing and what's the easiest thing? Is there an easiest thing?
Good question. Easiest, I think, easiest was back interview. It's estimate is company and is team good for me. Because sometimes at first minutes of interview, I understand that it is not the place where I want to work. So I try to finish it quickly. And hardest thing is understand what maximum salary company can get me. Because if sometimes I ask a bigger salary than company can pay for such vacations or for that work, and I not get this work. But sometimes I decrease my rate and later understand that I was not my estimation was wrong, and some colleagues have a greater salary but the same same complicated of job, same quantity of job and so on. So
Okay.
easy thing, yes, it's understand is company position and team good, and hardest thing it's precisely understand salary expectation from a company side.
That's a very good point to make, that salary expectation, because that's always a question that kind of throws you off. I mean, sometimes the position will give a salary, sometimes they'll ask you what your expectations are, and then you feel like, all right, if I give a lower price, does that mean that I'm going to get the job? If I give the higher one, does that mean that it's not going to be? It's a very kind of tricky position to be in. I don't know, personally, for me, I think that it's hard to ask for more. And I remember one time I went on a job interview, and anyway, the job interview was for this media job, and it required a partner. So after the first interview, they said, well, come in and bring a partner, because we need to hire 2 people, not just 1. And I'm going, okay. And so I hire, I find someone to do this partner with me, and we come in and they like our work and they say, okay, yeah, we want to take you. What are your salary expectations? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, and I wasn't very comfortable answering that question. And this potential future co-worker of mine gave a price that was extraordinarily high. I mean, unbelievably high in my sort of opinion. And I thought, my goodness, I mean, we can't ask for that. It's completely absurd. Not absurd, but just very, very high. And sure enough, they agreed to that. And it was one of those moments where, well, I guess maybe in the future I need to have a little bit more confidence too, because it's possible. So I think you definitely need to be confident in your abilities and not not underestimate yourself, but undervalue yourself, because maybe when people are looking to hire, they want to see in a person that they feel that they are worth, a higher amount of money for a salary. Again, like for me personally, that's an uncomfortable area, but maybe that is something that we should all kind of consider for the future when it comes to job interviews and our own sort of confidence levels and everything. What about you, Loco? What do you think is the hardest part and the easiest part of a job interview?
Well, it's a difficult question for me because, during last maybe 10 years, 8 years, I've been on an interview twice. Twice this summer. So I don't know what is the hardest thing. Maybe to present myself well is the hardest thing for me. To look well, to look accurate and very, very like представительный, maybe.
Yeah, this distinguished professional look. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, because in my everyday life, I don't care a lot about my appearance. I prefer to wear clothes that are not beautiful, but very
comfortable, practical.
Comfortable, yeah, practical, yeah, that's it. So I can go to the shop and buy milk if I need, just in home shorts or something like that,
Yeah, but that's okay. I'm gonna go off into a bit of a tangent here, but in Russia, being a woman, that's kind of an issue, isn't it? Because women are supposed to be glamorous, and if you go for a job interview and you've got to be high heels and makeup,
yes, that's for me. That's very, very difficult because I don't know how to make a good makeup. I don't even have any good cosmetics or something like that. I don't know how to make my hair look well, for example. I can only wash it and dry it, and that's all that I can. So for me, that's really a challenge to look well at the interview. I don't care about to speak. Maybe I can. It's difficult for me to choose what I need to say, to tell the interviewer, or what I should keep to myself. Better keep to myself, because I'm very I'm a very разговорчивый, talkative person. Yeah, and I can talk about myself a lot if they ask. So maybe there is something that it's better. I'd rather not tell them during the interview, and sometimes it's hard for me to understand what is better to keep to myself, or what is better to tell them.
Right. Okay. That filter.
Yes, that inner filter. Yeah, it doesn't work very well. I don't believe him. I don't trust him.
Okay. All right. So you're talking about filter and about dress code, or kind of like your appearance. All right.
Yeah. And the easiest way, the easiest thing for me in the interview, I think, is to perform myself well while I'm talking, because I can talk correctly, I can talk in a rich way, and I can say a lot of, I can tell the person a lot of interesting things about my experience in my life, and what challenges I have in my everyday life, and how I complete them.
Okay, yeah. So your ability to communicate, you're saying, is that?
Yeah. So I communicate easily. That's the easiest thing for me.
Okay. What about you, Alia? What is the hardest thing for you, easiest thing for you?
The hard is the same. The hardest thing for me, I think, it is difficult for me to that negotiation point. So the same about the income, salary, and how much to ask, how much they could give. I think that I want to. This is my. I know my position, but I know that on the other side, that they want to give um, possibly less. So that negotiation point is the most difficult for me, and most easy. I don't know what is, maybe not most easy, but when you know much about the company, many facts about that company, it is easy to speak with them really. If
Right.
you know the company, so and maybe even some persons, some people who work there, so it is very easy to communicate. And if you don't know, the less you know, the more difficult it is, I think.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good point. Being prepared, so knowing as much as you can about the company, and then again, as you said, that whole sort of salary expectation. Where do you go from there? What have you? Let's maybe, did anyone see this one? Read that article about Canada, about jobs in Canada in English. Did you see that at all? Did anyone read that one?
Not me. I'm sorry.
Not me, but this is one point why I joined this class. Because all my career I've gone step by step to take a direct job on foreign customers, foreign for me customers, and ability to take part in English interview, to present myself on English, to join some discussions. This is very important for me.
Okay, okay, very good, Denise. And Elia, did you read it? Yes, no, doesn't matter if you didn't, because we'll talk about it in a bit.
I've read, but very quickly, and I'm not sure that I had understood everything.
Okay, all right. Well, basically, I mean, this is an article that I came across when I was actually helping my husband. He's not a native speaker of English, but he was thinking to get a job in Canada, and we were looking at possible options and obstacles and what have you. And I guess it's interesting because there are a lot of foreigners that are living in Canada. When it comes to applying for these jobs, not jobs that are cleaning or these sort of lower paying jobs, but professional jobs. A problem in Canada, for example, is language, knowledge of, well, primarily the English language, depending on where you are, maybe French language as well, but English language in particular. This is a problem that a lot of people have. And it's not, interestingly, it's not just mastery of the English language itself, it's the accent that a person has. So if you speak English with an accent, whether it be, I don't know, Russian or Italian or Nigerian or what have you, people are going to look at that and say, oh, well, you don't have enough Canadian experience. So this is a very interesting point. I think we can come up with, or we can discuss in general, not so specific about Canada, but more about the expectations that interviewers have with candidates who aren't native speakers of English, specifically with the English language. Now, how much do you think the English language is important in your specific field? And what do you think, where do you think your confidence level is in that language? And what do you think people, how do you think people see your language skill? Maybe let's go with Denise. So how important is the language? How strongly do you think you know English? And how do you think people understand you knowing English? Denise, what do you think?
Me first?
Yeah, Yeah, we'll go with you first. How important is English in your career?
Since I'm working on international projects, English was um, English was only one way that all people can communicate between him. So all documentation, all business process was based on English, and it's not possible to take part in development if you can't even read English emails, English documentation, so on. But for not technical, for real communications, it's very important to have more fluent English, to have an ability to I try to выражать, to not explain, yes, emotions, prove opinions, because it's most management discussion is not about technical discussion, it's more about some personalities, some feelings, and so on.
Okay, all right. So you definitely have, as you mentioned, English is this international language, English being the means that you're able to communicate and the importance of expression. What about you? I mean, how confident are you in your English? And do you think that other people can understand you? I mean, do you think that there's a barrier, or do you think that it's pretty much okay? What would you say?
I'm sure that on a technical sphere, people can understand me well, because I have much problems, tasks solved when we discuss it on English, sometimes even by phone, and so on. But in other cases, for me, it's hard to explain my emotion or also provide confidence. I have a solution, but it's a not trivial solution, and I try to prove that this is a better solution. And sometimes I can't explain this well. I can only make some very unemotional talk, but it's not efficient for some cases.
Okay, all right, so more or less. What about you, Elia? I mean, what about English? How important is English? And what about your confidence and how people feel about your mastery of English? What would you say?
I am not satisfied with my level of English at all, but for people who I communicate with, is enough. I don't feel some cause only few people communicate with me in English. I remember only one point when I really needed the knowledge of English. It was interview with the IKEA company, and I passed that interview, which that was based on language skills. Failed in another part of that interview concerning connected with mathematician skills. Language is not my weak point, but mathematics is.
Okay. Yoko, what about you? What about you? When it comes to language, how important do you think English is for you? What about your confidence in the language and other people's
Well, I think
opinion?
I think my English and Spanish skills are very important in my working life, but I'm not confident at all neither in English nor in Spanish, because I think they're both in very, very bad condition. So I prefer not to demonstrate these skills during the interview. You know?
Okay.
Yeah, so it's better for me to get a task and to use it in just in how we say it na поле боя than in this demonstration.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. What about, oh my goodness. What about when, let's switch away from language and get back to the interview itself, because we only have, what, about 12 more minutes to go. How comfortable do you feel asking questions at an interview? What do you think, Ellie? How comfortable do you feel? You talked about these other issues and maybe feeling overconfident, but what about asking questions, like maybe about salaries or about vacation time or something like this? How comfortable do you feel?
Yeah, you know, I really like asking questions, and I feel confident asking questions, but not concerning a salary questions. I
Okay,
think
that's still it's the hardest
more
part.
very easy, much more easy to ask about even private life, but not about salary.
Okay. All right. What about you, Denise? How comfortable do you feel asking questions on a job interview?
Mm, For my profession, it's an important part of interview because it's a really interview should be some kind of scrum. I try to get much information about my future job, about process in company, even about salary and so on. And sometimes I was in a situation where interviewer want to answer all questions, and usually it was a bad sign.
Okay, why would you
So,
say it was a bad sign? Why would you say it's a bad sign?
because in software development process, it's a foundation base part of good product. But it's hard to find people and organize process such way. So usually simple is only trying to find some skilled people and hope that in better organized processes people can do some good product. But it's not interesting for staff really, and it's not interesting to work in such company. So for me, it was very important to understand precisely rather big set of details. Also, sometimes it's a kind of secret information or like a know-how. A company want to provide such information out. But it's possible to understand something not directly. Use different questions and try to gather all possible information.
Okay, very good point. Again, you know, Denise, this sounds a lot like a university exam, right? You don't know the exact answer, but you can go around this way and give the information you want, and maybe this is
Yes,
a very
yes.
interesting thing. I think it's very
Good parallel. I'm not look at this skill on such point.
yeah. Let's go back to let's maybe finish up because we're got down to 8 minutes now. But what about confidence? Confidence and arrogance. You know, because this is the thing. I mean, Elia, you mentioned this too about how maybe you end up being a bit too confident. What do you think you can do, or how can you express confidence without coming across as arrogant? I mean, again, I'm gonna just this is a problem, and I don't want to say, I don't want to, be putting blame on people or something like that, but I've noticed that a lot of times people whose native English is not, native language is not English, unfortunately, sometimes end up coming across as being a bit arrogant when they're speaking English. And it's not because they themselves are arrogant, but I think that it's a natural reaction of maybe being nervous and wanting to express yourself, wanting to show that you know the English language. You don't want people to think that, this is a problem for you. And so again, like sometimes this is something that comes across as sort of arrogance. So what do you think that maybe you can do to show your confidence, your self-confidence, to show your mastery of the English language, but also not come across as arrogant? What sort of boundaries and self-regulation do you think you can implement in order to do that? What do you think, Alia?
I think really it is useful to be prepared for the interview, to maybe use some partisan ways to get as much information as possible. And I think that will give a person real confidence. Getting that real confidence, you will avoid that nervously caused arrogance.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good point. That's a good point, to have that information, to know what you're getting into. I think that'll definitely help with your confidence. Very good point. Ljoka, what do you think? What do you think about confidence and avoiding that arrogance?
Well, I think that one thing that can help everyone not to be arrogant and to perform himself well is not to hurry. Just not to hurry, to breathe deeply, and if it turns to speaking English, not to hurry while you are speaking. Just to think about the words you need, about the forms, the endings. Because for me, it's better to speak slowly but correctly than to speak fast but with some mistakes. Because mistakes always make bad impression. Even if you read, when you hear them, and the speed of speech doesn't make such an impression.
Okay, so keep it slow and don't rush it. That's a very good point.
Yeah. Because if you want to explain yourself faster, you might do some more mistakes if you speak slower.
Okay, very good point. Very good point. Denise, what do you think?
Generally, it's be ready to reject, because rejecting after interview, it's not only about professional skills, but sometimes about personal features and probably skill set which differs than required and so on. So be prepared to reject. It's a good start point. Next, my experience about speaking faster or slower is opposite than Ljoka, because when I try to speak slowly, usually people understand me worse, and when I try to speak faster and sometimes to correct or retry some explanations, effect was much better. But probably it's specifically for technical sphere and technical discussions. Usually I'm interview for programmers is provided by another programmers and another engineers.
Okay, so you have a bit of an advantage there, right? Because you're working with
Yes.
people or being interviewed by people who understand the
Yes.
whole sort of thing. But yeah, good point. I mean, what works for one
And
person doesn't necessarily work for another one. Maybe speaking faster for you is better, speaking slower for Yoke is better. I think it's a good point.
And another is more about strategic thing. On some level of professionalism, interview it's not when you want to get job. It's also about company want to get you as a staff. If people have more strong professional skill, it's situation can be changed to company want get you more than you want to work on this company, and this also helps feel confident.
Definitely, definitely. They need you. They need you. That's a very a very important thing when it comes to confidence. I think for me, going in their confidence, to me, what shows confidence too is the ability to ask questions. I think that's something that's important. And if you're there, if you maybe don't understand something, don't be afraid to ask for a little bit of clarification. I mean, that makes the whole process more interesting for the interviewer too. So I think that these are the sort of things we've brought up very good points about how we speak, about who's interviewing us, about that balance, about knowing what we're getting into when we have an interview. And I hope that this edition of our conversation group will help you on any future interviews that you might be having. So I think that we're right at our hour mark. And are there any ideas or any suggestions for topics for next time?
Well, I'd like to talk about not something too serious or too difficult or too sad.
All right. Something lighthearted. Any other suggestions? Elia, Denise? Silence.
I try to prepare suggestions to next meeting.
Okay.
I don't know. For me, there are many themes interesting. I don't know, maybe some. So there are many interesting things, but they are interesting just only for girls. Something like, I don't know, shopping, yes, but it won't be interesting for Denise.
No problem. It's a good way to extend my vocabulary.
What about okay, so what was your suggestion there, Elia?
So speak about some maybe not only about shopping, but about that marketing.
Okay.
And
marketing,
I think it
shopping.
will be
What
interesting.
about
Marketing, shopping, and that tricks that some.
Yeah, what about holiday shopping? Because that's pretty much everywhere, isn't it? Already this whole sort of New Year's, winter shopping, all these
Maybe
advertising.
these two.
Yeah, maybe we can prepare somehow better this year for New Year to avoid this terrible holiday shopping.
Okay, I think that's an interesting topic. We can talk about this holiday shopping season because I think it's already started. You already have, all of these sales and advertisements and decorations and everything else. So that sounds like a good idea. I like that one.
Yeah, me too.
Well,
good topic.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today for our conversation club.
Yeah, thank you, Daniela. It was very interesting.
All right, and good luck to everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.